incredible warning revealed. Black Maid's touch saves Billionaire from driver's hidden gun. Under an azure sky, kissed by the soft blooming of dogwoods, Sarah meticulously scrubbed the marble countertops in the grand kitchen of the David Harrington estate. The scent of fresh grass wafted through the open windows, a sweet reminder of life that felt so distant from her own. Each stroke of the cloth felt heavier under the weight of a secret, one that could change everything she held dear. The glimmering surfaces reflected her diligent work, but also the stark disparity between her modest station and the opulence around her. Her days revolved around sweeping, polishing, and quietly observing. David, the 28-year-old billionaire poised for greatness, had become not just her employer, but a friend. Their conversations, huddled over coffee breaks and while waiting for the washing machine to hum its last spin, were infused with his grand dreams of innovation. But the safe brilliance of David's aspirations felt overshadowed by an unsettling tension, particularly from Carl, the enigmatic chauffeur, whose presence lingered like a storm cloud above their unsullied interactions. One afternoon, while dusting the mahogany bookshelves that held the weight of David's ambitions, Sarah noticed Carl in the driveway, his demeanor a subtle but familiar threat. As he moved, a sinister glint caught her eye. Fear gripped her as she discovered the concealed gun tucked under the seat of Carl's luxury vehicle. The revelation sent an icy wave through her. She couldn't let David remain oblivious. Would Carl's motives snuff out the light of his future? But speaking up could bring ruin to her own fragile life. Her income, her dignity, even her safety could swing on the pendulum of this truth. The conflict coursed through her, racing thoughts battling determination. Should she act decisively or preserve the status quo? The anguish was unbearable, a tug-of-war between loyalty to David and fear for her own life. Her heart began to race, muscles tight as she considered the consequences. Would he believe her? Would he see her as just the maid, an invisible part of his world rather than a vigilant guardian? The stakes were built on a crumbling foundation of trust. She had watched how the affluent often overlooked those beneath them. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. A deep breath clenched in her chest as she turned to David, wresting the right words from her throat.
David, I need to talk to you. It's important. The weight of vulnerability hung between them like a fog, and she saw his brow furrow in confusion, brushing aside her urgency with a wave of his hand. He believed in the world he had crafted, a bubble of success safe from the harsh truths of life beyond its gated walls. Her breath quickened, the walls closing in as she struggled to convey the gravity of her warning. Suddenly, everything they shared, the late-night talks, the dreams that danced between them, fell prey to an unsettling silence. Her past, intertwined with David's in a web of systemic barriers and inherited prejudices, clawed at her resolve. Would she remain silent, a mere observer bound by circumstance, or break free and intertwine their destinies in a way that could shape both their futures? With each passing moment, the urgency escalated, leaving Sarah teetering on the brink of defining what true loyalty meant. The realization hit her. Whatever her choice, the truth would ripple through their lives in ways unimaginable. As doubt clawed at her gut, she felt time slipping away. Would she take a stand and become an unlikely force for change, or would she recede into the shadows, reserved for those who fade away in silence? The clock ticked down to an indeterminate fate, each second heavy with the weight of her decision, an irrevocable moment that might define not just their lives, but the very notion of wealth and awareness. Sarah's heart raced, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her chest. David's confusion morphed into concern as he sensed the gravity of her demeanor. "What's going on, Sarah?" His voice cut through the thick air of uncertainty, urging her to pull the words together. "I saw something dangerous," she managed to articulate, the taste of fear bitter on her tongue. "It's about Carl. I think he might be a threat to you." The moment the words escaped her lips, she felt a mixture of relief and dread wash over her. The truth was out, yet the vulnerability of her position surged anew. David's expression shifted, doubt creeping into his features. "Carl? He's just my driver, Sarah. You know how he is, always professional." The dismissal stung, and anxiety washed over her like a wave crashing against rocky shores. "But I saw a gun," she whispered, the confession shaking loose a fresh cascade of tension. As she met his gaze, desperation clung to her. "He's hiding it in his car. You don't understand how serious this is." David stepped back, the initial friendliness curdling into uncertainty. The truth of her revelation hung uncomfortably between them, and she instantly regretted the way her words could shatter the fragile connection they had built. "You're sure? That's a serious accusation."
His voice wavered slightly, a notable crack in his usually resolute demeanor. "I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. I care about your safety. You have to listen." Her desperation pulsed with urgency.
The unease that had curled its fingers around her gut turned into a burning ember of resolve. This was not just about her safety anymore. It was about something deeper that stirred within her, an innate courage rising to the surface. David's brow furrowed with contemplation, his dreams of innovation suddenly tempered by the threat before him. "I'll check it out," he finally said cautiously, "but it seems a bit far-fetched. Carl has been with me for years." The familiar sting of dismissal pierced her, but now, more than ever, Sarah knew this was about their futures, his dreams, her aspirations, and a world that confined them both. "He might be more than what you see," she pressed, urging him to open his eyes. "His loyalty might not lie where you think." As David puzzled over her words, a flicker of recognition danced in his eyes. For the first time, he regarded her not solely as his maid, but as a vigilant ally. The shift was subtle but profound, igniting a spark of hope in Sarah. Perhaps she wasn't merely an invisible part of his world. Maybe she could become a force big enough to rally them against the looming threat. Days flowed as she played her role meticulously, polishing the silver and organizing the linen closets while meticulously observing every flicker of interaction between David and Carl. An unsettling tension coiled tighter with each passing moment, the atmosphere electric. For how long could she stay hidden behind the veil of servitude, cloaked in fear while danger lurked so close? In her moments alone, Sarah's thoughts refined themselves into strategies, cataloging every piece of information she could extract from lingering conversations. As doubts swirled in her mind, she began to uncover new facets of herself, the ability to plan, to confront danger. She was no longer just a maid, she was becoming a defender. But an unexpected encounter tested her resolve. Carl sought her out one afternoon as she loaded the cleaning supplies into the cupboard. "You've been keeping secrets, haven't you?" His voice dripped with menace, sculpting an aura of intimidation that sent shivers racing down her spine. His approach was calculated and menacing, a storm brewing with dark intentions. "Just doing my job," she replied cautiously, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. But deep inside, a fierce determination ignited. This was the moment that would define her. The stakes had risen, the tension palpable, and she knew that soon she would have to make a choice that would set her on a path she couldn't turn back from. The question loomed heavy. Would she choose flight or fight when facing the very real threat of Carl? As shadows darkened the estate, uncertainty veiled the morning light, and Sarah prepared to confront everything she had held back. The time had indeed come to face the danger lurking in her life. Would the courage fostered within her rise to the occasion, or would Carl succeed in silencing her voice forever?
The silence in the room felt suffocating. Sarah clenched her fists, drawing on her strength in the face of imminent confrontation. Carl's pointed gaze bore down on her, brimming with a determination to suppress her burgeoning courage. This was no longer about being just a maid. It was a battle for survival, an urgent reckoning of who she was becoming. "You think I don't know what you're up to?" he advanced, his voice a low growl that vibrated through her. In that moment, she recognized the weight of her new role. Not simply a defender, but a potential obstacle to his clandestine ambitions. The threat was more direct and personal now, crystallizing the stakes in a way she had never anticipated. "Why do you care about him?" Carl asked, his tone bordering on incredulous. "You're just a passing shadow in his life. Don't get in the way of things that don't concern you." A wave of defiance washed over Sarah. "It's not just about concern, it's about duty. I know what I've seen, and I won't let that go unchallenged," she shot back, surprising even herself with the steadiness of her voice. With each word, confidence enveloped her like a protective cloak. Carl paused, his smirk fading momentarily as he scrutinized her, weighing her resolve against his own intimidation tactics. It was a strategic recalibration, one that demanded she not only act strong, but embody strength in her vulnerability. "Believe me, you'd be better off keeping your mouth shut," he warned, his menace slithering into a promise. Yet within the twisting ropes of fear, there was an ember of affirmation ignited. Sarah recalled the list she had drawn up, the conversations she had meticulously cataloged, the patterns of Carl's behavior she had observed. All the thoughts she had brushed away due to self-doubt suddenly crystallized into focal points of truth. This wasn't merely about Carl's threats, it had become a personal expedition into her own potential. When he turned to leave, Sarah seized her opportunity.
You may be powerful in your own right, but that doesn't shield you from the truth, she called after him, her voice trembling from the tension, yet firm enough to echo off the walls. Success depended on not wavering now. As the echo of her words faded, Sarah's mind reeled with urgency. She was alone in this battle, and yet the deeper knowledge she had unearthed within her allowed her to see a broader vision, one where information could dismantle masks of loyalty that blurred the line between good and evil. Time seemed to crawl. The horn of Carl's car outside shattered her reflection as she quickly pivoted to her next step. A decision hunched on her shoulders: gather incontrovertible proof about Carl, or confront him when he was least expecting it. The risk of going through his things felt like stepping into the lion's den, yet the potential outcome could lead to David's safety. Operational efficacy surged through her veins.
Sarah's newfound determination became palpable with a singular thought. She would no longer be a mere background player in someone else's narrative. Operating outside the shadow of servitude, she stepped boldly towards Carl's vehicle, parked unobtrusively by the hedge. What would she find? Would the risk warrant every ounce of adrenaline rushing through her? She could no longer wait to be saved. She needed to seize control over her own fate, standing on the cusp of an unprecedented transformation. The sound of distant footsteps drew her attention as anxiety prickled at her sense of urgency. Would she be caught? A shiver of doubt nagged at her resolve. She stood poised at this critical juncture, the threat of discovery looming just out of reach. Her next actions could either empower or entrap her. As shadows loomed around her, the time for hesitation had slipped away. With the chilling truth of Carl's intentions at stake, she pushed open the car door. What secrets lay hidden beneath the surface that could save David and herself from the gathering storm? Her heart raced as she found herself dissolving into the unknown. The consequences of her choice loomed ahead, teetering on the edge of revelation. The interior of Carl's vehicle was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the heated confrontation she had just left. For a moment, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had crossed an invisible line, stepping into a territory that was not hers. Shoving her doubts aside, she focused on the task at hand. Behind the steering wheel lay a hollow space filled with an air of secrets she had to uncover. Glancing around, Sarah observed the disheveled car interior, wrappers strewn about, loose papers crumbled in the corners. Fragments of Carl's life, hints of a man hiding behind layers of bravado and menace. Heart pounding, Sarah rummaged through the glove compartment, pushing aside expired registration forms and stale crumbs. Her fingers brushed against a thick envelope. It felt fortified with weight beyond its dimensions, intuition thrumming with urgency as she slid it free. A quick glance confirmed what she feared. It contained documents and notes that could expose Carl's dealings. Sweating slightly, she turned her attention away from the envelope and back into the car's interior. Behind the seat, a small leather folder caught her eye, official-looking yet ominously out of place. With a quick jerk, she pulled it into her hands, her pulse racing at the prospect of discovering whatever damning evidence it could hold. Just as she began to unzip the folder, muffled voices from the house drew her attention. Panic surged. She couldn't be caught here. Fresh resolve coursed through her veins. If she could take whatever evidence she gathered and plan a strategic approach to confront Carl later, it could shift the balance of power in her favor. In that precise moment, she found herself at a critical threshold, whether to boldly risk a glance at the folder now, or retreat without exposing herself. The decision lapped at her mental fortitude like waves against a fragile shore. With steely determination, she quickly flicked the zipper open. A series of photos spilled out, orders for large, untraceable cash transactions, diagrams of locations, and a name she had seen mentioned repeatedly in hushed conversations, David's father's name. Words blurred before her eyes. This connection was more formidable than she imagined. Carl's ambitions were entangled not only with threats, but with dangerously established networks. Her hands trembled with adrenaline and the gravity of her discovery. Not only could she secure David's safety, but this evidence could also expose Carl in ways he could never fully anticipate. A sudden door slamming echoed behind her, biting sharply at her already frayed nerves. She could not delay any longer. With a fire ignited within, she stuffed the photos back into the folder and tucked the heavy envelope under her shirt, heart racing as she silently climbed out of the car. Just as she pulled the door shut, she barely glimpsed Carl walking toward the vehicle, a smirk plastered on his face, clearly unaware of the storm brewing just beneath his facade. At that critical moment, she felt an exhilarating fusion of fear and purpose intermingling within her. She needed a plan, something that would not only keep David safe, but also put Carl on a precarious tightrope of uncertainty. As she retreated into the shadows of the secured estate, a question echoed in her mind. What would be the first move she would make with this explosive information? The thrill of confrontation tinged the air, vibrant and charged. The time had come for a decisive engagement. Holding all the cards didn't guarantee victory.
She still had to navigate the dangerous game ahead. Would she be ready for Carl's next move? With every step she took back towards the house, the weight of her discovery felt both empowering and ominous, a precursor to the impending storm. Would her strategic maneuvering hold against the tempest that Carl could unleash, or was she merely an unsuspecting pawn in a game far larger than she realized? The air felt colder as Sarah moved deeper into the shadows, heart beating a fierce rhythm against her chest. She needed to regroup and think clearly. Every step she took felt calculated, each one guiding her toward the house while the chaos within her threatened to spill out. The photographs and documents were a ticking time bomb, and she had no desire to set them off prematurely. Once inside, she retreated to the dimly lit kitchen, pressing her back against the cool wall. Her breath slowed, but her mind raced. She had never envisioned herself in a situation like this. Tripwires of fear, purpose, and courage tangled in her psyche.
It had always been about survival, but now it was about strategy, and that required a different kind of grit. Sinking into a chair, she pulled out the envelope and folder, spreading the contents before her. Each document felt like a piece of a puzzle, lock and key connections intertwining the dangerous landscape of Carl's operations. As she analyzed the photos, the initial adrenaline rush began to fade, unveiling the weight of the choices ahead. Who could she trust? What alliances could she forge in this treacherous terrain? Even as she pieced together the evidence, a gnawing uncertainty hung over her. This wasn't just any confrontation. It was a high-stakes game on a tightrope stretched over a chasm of deceit. A low voice broke her concentration, echoing from another room. It was Carl, chatting comfortably, the very image of ease. The contrast gnawed at her. His casual demeanor was the calm before an inevitable storm, a reminder of the danger he represented. Every fiber of her being urged her to act, to flip the switch from passive observer to aggressive participant. Suddenly, a thought struck her. Was this her opportunity? To initiate a confrontation that could turn Carl's self-assured demeanor against him? But the consequence of that move weighed heavily. Was she prepared to go toe-to-toe with someone capable of dismantling lives so effortlessly? That uncertainty felt familiar. It reminded her of moments in her life when she had had to decide between flight or fight. It always came down to protecting those she loved or preserving her own safety. She thought of David, and the surge of protectiveness rekindled her resolve. She would fight, not out of reckless abandon, but with a calculated purpose. With renewed determination, she gathered the scattered papers and returned them to the envelope, tucking it back beneath her shirt. It was not enough to simply possess this information. She needed to wield it effectively. She needed an ally, someone who could amplify her voice against Carl's silencing threats. Her mind darted to the people within her reach. There was Lisa, the trustworthy coworker who had always shown support. Perhaps she could provide the network and resources Sarah needed to take calculated risks. With a plan forming in her mind, the prospect of enlisting a partner in her endeavor provided a sliver of hope. But just as a sense of clarity began to settle, a chilling thought pierced through her resolve. Carl might have eyes on her. He was cunning, adept at manipulation, and would not hesitate to exploit any weakness. Every second counted. Having made her decision, Sarah felt the focus sharpen. It was time for action. She headed toward the front room, knowing she would need to confront Carl soon, whether she felt right or not. Steeling her nerves, she practiced her lines in her mind. How would she reveal that she wasn't simply a pawn anymore? How would she assert herself in a domain designed to intimidate?
The weight of her decision settled heavily as she reached for the doorknob, ready to step back into the danger unfolding before her. Yet the question lingered. Would she emerge the victor in this psychological duel, or would Carl's facade unravel her fragile plan? Just as she turned the knob, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approached, and the soaring stakes twisted around her. There would be no more running from this confrontation. She would have to confront Carl head-on. What would she say to tip the balance? The moment was upon her, and in the grip of uncertainty, she felt an unexpected thrill. The game had begun. Sarah took a steadying breath, grasping the doorknob as uncertainty coiled within her like a tightly wound spring. The footsteps were getting closer, and her pulse quickened. The moment she'd been dreading and anticipating simultaneously was upon her. She would have to choose her words carefully, turning this face-off into an opportunity. As she swung the door open, the familiar charm that Carl exuded was punctured by a sharper air. He turned to her, his expression shifting from surprise to cautious curiosity, like a predator sizing up unexpected prey. "Sarah," he said smoothly, an unsettling smile stretching across his lips. "What brings you out of the shadows?" There was no turning back now. "I need to talk," she stated,
her voice stronger than she felt. She needed to represent the boldness that had dormant for so long within her. "It's about the projects you're undertaking." Carl arched an eyebrow, intrigued but clearly wary. "Project discussions aren't typically conducted in the kitchen, are they?" "Maybe not, but I think the circumstances require some honesty," she replied, drawing on the grit that had already altered her internal landscape. This was not just a spoken challenge, it was a firm anchoring in the stark reality she was confronting. As their eyes locked, Sarah felt a weight lift, yet another settled deep within her. This was not merely about confronting Carl for what he did, it was about reclaiming her voice in a situation where silence seemed safer. The dynamics had shifted. She wasn't merely defending herself anymore, she was asserting herself. Carl leaned against the countertop, studying her with a mix of amusement and something more dangerous, perhaps respect. "You surprise me, Sarah. You've grown bolder since I last saw you." The comment stung with an edge of mockery, but she took it as fuel. "I've learned a lot in the last few days, Carl. I know what you're involved in, and it's wrong. The destruction it causes is monumental." He regarded her without flinching, his amusement morphing into a hard facade. "And what do you plan to do with this new knowledge?" In that instant, a wave of determination surged through her. This was the moment she had prepared for, the first step in regaining control. "I plan to expose the truth," she said, willing the statement to resonate beyond her own fears.
Carl's smile vanished, replaced by an iciness that chilled the room. "You think you can take me on? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Yet even as his threat hovered between them, Sarah felt a fire igniting inside. She might not have all the answers, but she had resolve. "I might not have all the power, but I have evidence. The photographs, the documents, they can't be easily dismissed. You think power can silence the truth, but it only masks it, waiting to be revealed." At that moment, she realized something vital. It wasn't only about gathering allies, it was about building the fortitude to stand her ground. Carl seemed to notice the shift within her, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Interesting tactic," he said, maintaining a facade of indifference. "But understand this, I have resources, reach, and influence. You're playing a dangerous game, and one misstep will cost you dearly." "I'm aware," Sarah shot back, her heart pounding with conviction. "But this isn't about the resources you wield. It's about moral choices, how far you'll go to protect your empire." The tension hung between them, charged with potential. Would this confrontation be her undoing, or would it lay the groundwork for a transformative shift? They were no longer just adversaries in a professional setting. They were locked in a battle of wills. Just then she remembered Lisa and the potential ally she intended to enlist. Could she risk revealing her support network to Carl? After all, Carl was a hunter, and every ally she had could become a target. "Think about what I've said, Carl," she spoke, taking a step back, feeling the first whispers of power flutter within her. "Let me remind you that shadows can hide many things, including those who hold the keys to your downfall." As she retreated into the hallway, Sarah felt a deep-seated exhilaration mingling with her trepidation. She would need to act quickly. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but she was ready to play her hand. The choice ahead was clear: confront Carl more aggressively, or slip further into a dangerous game of deception. She had glimpsed the power that came with her new resolve, but would it be enough to tip the scales in her favor? And would she be able to weave Lisa into her strategy before Carl caught a whiff of her intentions? The real game was just beginning. Sarah stepped into the dimly lit hallway, her mind racing with possibilities. The confrontation with Carl had awakened something within her, a fierce adrenaline that she hadn't felt in years. Yet alongside that exhilaration, palpable dread loomed. The stakes were monumental, and the weight of her next decisions pressed down on her. She had to act decisively. A path lay before her, but it branched into murky uncertainty. Would she seek Lisa's counsel now, or gather more evidence before moving forward? The photograph she had tucked away felt like both a shield and a chain.
Revealing it prematurely could expose her hand too soon, yet safeguarding it meant she remained vulnerable. Choosing the former, hers was a mission of trust. But could Lisa offer the support she needed? Would Carl act before she could execute her strategy? Questions swirled in her mind like a chaotic storm, and she needed clarity that somehow eluded her amidst the intensity of her mission. As she paced her small kitchen, thoughts darted back to the darkness in Carl's eyes. His subtle smirk haunted her. The confrontation had altered their dynamic. She could sense the power within herself rising, a slow and transformative brew of resilience and courage. Yet fear still gnawed at her resolve. Was she strong enough to tackle the beast? She decided on a clear course. She needed to give Lisa a call. The moment her phone switched on, though,
The hesitations rushed in. What if Carl had eyes everywhere? What if just raising suspicion would lead him straight to her? But she did not have the luxury of hesitation. Leaving this to chance could cost her more than she was willing to gamble. Dialing Lisa's number, she forced herself to breathe deeply. After 3 rings, Lisa's voice came through, tinged with surprise. "Sarah, it's a bit late. What's going on?" "I need your help," she replied, urgency coloring her tone. "It's about Carl. I found something crucial. I can't go into details, but I need your expertise to navigate this." There was a beat of silence. Then Lisa's concern seeped through. "Is this about the barring issue? Things are escalating, Sarah. You can't just—" "It's more than that," Sarah insisted, her voice steady now, the fire inside her reigniting. "I'm ready to confront him, but I need your insight on what to do next, and discretion is key. I fear for the consequences if he gets wise." "Where can we meet?" Lisa asked, her professional instincts kicking in. Relief washed over Sarah. "How about the cafe by my place? Can you make it in 30? "On my way." As she hung up, adrenaline surged again. This felt like a pivotal moment. Engaging Lisa was not just about gathering evidence. It was about creating a united front, a symbol of resistance against a tyrant who thought he was above it all. But what if this also meant exposing Lisa once again to Carl's fury? Would her involvement compromise them both? The risk lingered, but it paled in comparison to remaining beholden to fear. She would craft a strategy that allowed them both to tread carefully, together. The realization that she was taking charge blossomed within her. For too long she had sat in the shadows, reduced to a puppet in someone else's play. No more. This was her narrative now. The game was shifting beneath them, and Sarah felt confident she could manipulate the pieces in her favor. After some time, Lisa arrived, and almost immediately they dove into a whirlwind of dialogue. Plans and contingencies were drafted swiftly.
With every exchange, Sarah felt the pieces falling into place. As they strategized, she unearthed a newfound conviction. This was not just about vengeance against Carl. It was about reclaiming her purpose. But as interwoven plans began to take shape, she couldn't shake the lingering thought. What if Carl anticipated her next move? Would he call her bluff? Would this boldness only draw a more dangerous attack? The tension mounted, leaving her heart racing. The cunning that lay ahead could become either her salvation or her downfall. As Lisa concluded their intense discussion, "Are you ready for him, Sarah?" she asked, gauging her friend's readiness. Before Sarah could respond, the buzz of her phone interrupted. An unknown number flashed on the screen, and instinctively she felt a shiver slither down her spine. This was new. Was it a coincidence or a harbinger of trouble? "Stay sharp, Lisa," Sarah whispered. The game was indeed just beginning, but now the stakes had risen even higher. Who was on the other end of that call? And how would this twist in the narrative affect her plans? Sarah's heart raced, a mix of dread and curiosity coursing through her veins as she stared at the unknown number. It wasn't merely a phone call. It felt like the final piece of a complex puzzle, one that could swing her fragile situation in either direction. She hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen, replaying the consequences of an impulsive decision. Who might this caller be? A potential ally? Or perhaps a minion of Carl's trying to draw her into a trap? "Should I answer?" she thought, torn between the hunger for information and the instinct to shield herself from exposure. Before she could overthink it, Sarah pressed the green button, placing the phone to her ear. "Hello?" she greeted, her voice steadier than she felt. The voice on the other end was deep, understated, possessive, like a calm before a storm. "Sarah, I think we need to talk." "Who is this?" Her pulse quickened, the adrenaline fusing her anxiety into clarity. Each instant weighed heavily. "Let's just say I have information that could change your situation, and I'm not a friend of Carl's." A flicker of hope ignited within her, but she tamped it down immediately. Too much uncertainty. "What do you want?" "Just one brief meeting. I promise it'll be worth your time," he said, urgency threading through his calm tenor. "Where?" she asked, instantly regretting her eagerness. This could be yet another thread in a web of lies, but something about his voice had calmed the storm in her mind. The possibility of leverage captivated her. "Your favorite cafe, tomorrow at noon. You can trust me, Sarah. I'm on your side." Before she could articulate more questions, he hung up, leaving her standing there. The moment felt suspended, as if the world around her had ceased its chaotic momentum. "What was that about?" Lisa interrupted, her eyes narrowing with concern.
"Unsure, but I have a new lead," Sarah admitted. The confidence surged back, a flicker of mastery over the chaos that had enveloped her life. "Someone reached out. They might have intel on Carl." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure this is smart? You don't even know who they are." "It doesn't matter. Our plans need to evolve. We need every advantage we can muster." The taste of defiance was almost intoxicating. She could feel the shift in her own narrative. Standing there with Lisa, she recognized the profound growth that propelled her. She was no longer simply reacting to Carl's tyranny. She was choosing to engage on her own terms. If this turns out to be another trap, Lisa paused, not wanting to stifle her friend's newfound fire, but concerned for her safety. I'll manage it, Sarah asserted. I've been underestimated too many times. This time, I dictate the terms. With determination burning within her, they resumed their strategy session, time shifting from fear to empowerment. She drafted text messages to Lisa, laying out alternatives in case their conversation with the mysterious caller turned sour. As they mapped potential scenarios, she unearthed a wealth of insight about herself and her capacity for strategic thinking. Each potential outcome felt less daunting. It felt like she was gaining an edge where she once had none. By nightfall, Sarah had sketched the contours of her next steps, her resolve coalescing into a palpable strength. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, but she was ready. Whatever happens, stick to the plan, Sarah reminded Lisa, the tension simmering below her calm facade. As if affirming the gravity of the moment, the doorbell rang. The faint sound sliced through the air, and in that instant, a choking foreboding took hold. With Lisa's eyes wide, Sarah exchanged a glance and moved toward the door, heart thumping with ominous anticipation. Would it be Carl, or a messenger of something completely unforeseen? Uncertainty coiled tightly around her thoughts, and she took a deep breath as she reached for the doorknob. The profound realization hit her hard. She was no longer stepping cautiously into the unknown. She was poised to confront it head-on. But would she find the truth, or yet another layer of deception behind that door? As she opened it, her gut twisted. Whatever awaited her could alter everything she had fought for. As the door swung open, Sarah was greeted not by a looming figure of dread, but by a package resting silently at her feet, marked only with her name. Relief coursed through her, quickly replaced by apprehension. Who left this, and why? The moment felt distorted, her heart rate climbing anew. Setting it aside momentarily, she stepped back, glancing at Lisa, who was peering curiously over her shoulder. Germs of doubt snaked through her mind, but she persisted in unpacking this latest development. An unexpected delivery could hold critical information or trap her further in Carl's machinations.
"Should we wait until morning?" Lisa asked, her brow knit with concern. "No," Sarah said firmly, her voice steady. "I need to know what this is." She knelt, fingers trembling slightly as she untied the twine. Inside the box, a series of documents lay neatly stacked. As she sifted through them, her breath caught in her throat. They were records, loss reports, emails, and court documents that illuminated a trail of deceit connected to Carl's operations. It was like a flickering lighthouse beam guiding her through treacherous waters. "Sarah, what is it? Is it about Carl?" Lisa's voice was a whisper, both hopeful and fearful. "Yes, but it gets deeper," Sarah responded, her mind racing. Each page unveiled layers of manipulation woven into Carl's business practices, showing a pattern of fraudulent activities that seemed almost too brazen. But behind the shock lay an exhilarating realization. This knowledge could be her leverage. Empowered by this discovery, Sarah knew she needed to utilize it wisely. She quickly organized the papers, creating a strategy in her mind. The thought process sparked a sense of confidence previously stifled by her precarious situation. "What are you thinking?" asked Sarah, as Sarah paced the room. "I have a meeting tomorrow, and I need to be ready for anything. We can't hold on to this until it's too late." Determination surged within her. If she played her cards right, this could be the very key to dismantle Carl's influence. "Okay, so what's the plan?" Lisa inquired, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and nervousness. "I'll take these documents to the cafe. If this mystery caller is legitimate, I might be able to negotiate a form of protection for myself and a chance to expose Carl. I need to assess who I'm dealing with." As she spoke, the larger scope of her aspirations solidified. This was about more than just saving herself. It was about turning the tide. "Be careful, though. You don't know what this guy wants," Lisa cautioned. But Sarah felt grounded. This uncertainty was no longer paralyzing. It felt like a puzzle to solve, rather than a threat. With the documents organized and her plan taking shape, Sarah felt a clarity she hadn't experienced in weeks. The complexity of her life had demanded she become a strategist, and in doing so, she was cultivating skills she never knew she possessed. Perhaps it had taken fear for her to find her drive, but now she was standing at a precipice of change. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Sarah said, locking eyes with Lisa, "I won't let fear dictate my choices. I am moving forward, and I won't allow Carl's shadow to loom over me any longer." With that, they retreated into a productive silence, finalizing plans for the meeting. As night enveloped them, Sarah could sense a palpable shift in her perception of power. She was no longer merely a victim in this game. She was stepping into her agency. The morning sun promised clarity. Yet, as Sarah lay her head on her pillow, sleep eluded her.
thoughts racing in preparation for the meeting ahead. Was the caller truly an ally? Would Carl's empire begin to unravel? With these questions brewing, anticipation bubbled within her as she finally closed her eyes. Whatever awaited her, she had committed to confronting it, a confrontation that would either herald liberation or bind her into deeper entanglements. The clock ticked toward dawn. The moment was approaching when she would have to choose between continuing to hide or embracing the battle. Her thoughts settled on one immutable truth. She was ready to face whoever stood before her. And when morning broke, she would unveil the secrets she clutched tightly. Yet an uneasy thought lingered. What if the caller had secrets of his own? As dawn broke over the estate, Sarah awoke with a resolute pulse thrumming in her veins. Today was not an ordinary day. Today would be a defining moment, an inflection point that would reshape not only her future, but potentially dismantle the dark shadow looming over David and herself. She glanced at the organized documents beside her, the culmination of weeks spent navigating treacherous waters. Determined, she dressed strategically, choosing an outfit that conveyed professionalism yet retained a semblance of her authentic self for the cafe meeting. She was no longer Sarah the maid. She was Sarah the strategist, poised for confrontation. As she drove toward the cafe, the weight of her mission solidified her purpose. She had unearthed hidden truths, and now was ready to leverage those truths against Carl's deceitful empire. Upon arriving at the cafe, a sense of anxious anticipation danced in the air. The unfamiliarity of the setting heightened her resolve. This encounter could turn the tides irrevocably. With each step toward the entrance, she collected her courage, reminding herself of the skills and insights she had cultivated along her arduous journey. Pushing through the door, Sarah scanned the room, spotting her mysterious caller seated at the far end, deep in thought. He looked unassuming at first glance, nothing that suggested an affinity for the world of crime. But as she embraced the moment, she understood how deceptive appearances could be. She approached him, careful to maintain an air of composure. "Are you the one who called?" she inquired as she settled into the seat opposite him. "Sarah," he greeted coolly, studying her with keen eyes. "I've been following your situation with Carl. It's precarious, both for you and for those connected to him. And you're here to help me?" Her tone carried the weight of skepticism, rooted in hard-won survival instincts. The stranger nodded, sliding a folder across the table towards her. "You have valuable information, and it seems you're wise enough to realize you could use more than just courage to confront him." With cautious fingers, Sarah opened the folder.
A glow of delight surged through her at the information inside, an array of connections, potential allies, and documented proof outlining Carl's misdeeds that could be a ticket out of this entanglement. "I can help you expose Carl, but it'll require you to be strategic," he said, his tone urgent. "You'll need to play this right. One miscalculation could bring more danger than you're prepared to confront." For a fleeting moment, fear brushed past her like a cold draft, but then she remembered the nights spent learning, the battles fought within and against herself. Resolve reinforced her once timid heart. "I'm ready," she declared, the weight of her past ushering in a powerful affirmation for her future. As they discussed plans, Sarah unveiled the documents she had received the previous night, revealing evidence that would shake Carl's foundation. A flicker of admiration crossed his face, and in that moment something irrevocably changed. Not only had she found a partner, she had found her own strength, her own voice echoing through the cacophony of chaos. Hours flew by as they outlined strategies to leverage their findings against Carl. Sarah felt empowered. She was not just preparing to expose Carl, but also asserting her rightful place in a new narrative she had forged through courage and resilience. As the conversation wrapped and they prepared to part ways, he looked at her intently. "You've grown. I see the potential you might have never recognized in yourself. Just remember, the moment you show weakness is when they will strike. Hold on to your resolve." Driving home, Sarah felt an unmistakable lightness, as if the burden that had weighed her down for so long was finally being dismantled piece by piece. She no longer felt like an outsider looking in. She was about to reclaim her power in a world that had so often tried to diminish her presence. In the days that followed, Sarah executed her plan with confidence and precision. She gathered every piece of evidence, communicated with David cautiously, and laid the groundwork for a confrontation with Carl that would expose his true motives. Each interaction fortified her position. She demonstrated to herself and others that she was no longer a passive player. She had transformed into a vanguard of her destiny. David's concern for her grew, but now he also relinquished trust in her judgment.
As she informed him about Carl's blunders and the evidence she had compiled, she saw him shift from skepticism to recognition. The connection that had once been fractured was gradually restored, a partnership that blurred the lines between servant and friend, ally and employer. The culmination came during a tense meeting where Sarah brought down the weight of the evidence in front of Carl, who was taken aback by her unyielding ferocity and revealed strength. With David standing by her side, the tableau shifted dramatically.
No longer meek, Sarah was the vessel of truth. She commanded the room with a robustness that resonated, forcing Carl to acknowledge the gravity of her findings. Today marks the start of a new chapter, she declared, the words carrying the echoes of countless battles won. You will be held accountable for your actions. As Carl's facade crumbled, Sarah could feel the applause of her own spirit ringing through her. She had achieved far more than mere survival. She had conquered fear. She had proven her worth, and she had become a protector of her own narrative. Her journey had transformed her from a shadow into a beacon, not only for herself, but for others in need of strength and courage. The shadows of her past dissipated, and as recognition glimmered in the eyes of those around her, Sarah knew it was time to fully embrace the woman she had become. She left that day feeling like an architect of her own success, her heart swelling with pride and confidence. She had not merely survived, she had rewritten her story, proving that empowerment often emerges from the most unlikely places. And as she stepped out into the daylight, the air filled with promise. She knew she would never retreat back into the shadows again. Make sure to be part of the journey. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's keep this conversation alive. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.